Well, my quotation for today is how blessed are those who know that their need of God, the kingdom of heaven, is theirs. Well, I want to tell you what I know about one of these people who knew that he needed God. Henry Niles Pierce was born October the 19th, 1820, in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. He graduated from Brown University in 3 years with a Phi Beta Kappa key. He had always wanted to be a clergyman, and he started studying the Baptist religion. So then he tried the other extreme, Roman Catholicism, and discarded that as well. He then took up the Episcopal faith and found it nearer to the original church with Jesus and the apostles. He studied this and became a priest, and then moved down south. And he had had trouble with his bronchial trouble all of his life, and in New England, and when he got to the south, it disappeared, the nice warm weather. Well, he started several churches there. He started out in Florida and went west. When he got to Texas, he met and married Nanny Shepherd. That was in 1854, the daughter of a well-to-do sugar planter in Texas. Then they settled in Mobile, Alabama, and were there for 11 years at St. John's Church. And then he was elected missionary bishop of Arkansas and the Indian Territory. That was in 1870. He and his family moved to Little Rock after his consecration back in Alabama, and they arrived here on Ash Wednesday. Well, he wanted a cathedral, even though he didn't have to have one. It seems a bishop only needs an office to keep his records in. But he wanted a separate building as a tribute to God and as to show that this was the headquarters of the Diocese of Arkansas. By 1879, he'd been here 9 years then, people here gave him permission to leave Arkansas and go elsewhere to raise money for a cathedral. No one offered to help. The South was in a deep depression after the Civil War, and there was no extra money to be had here, so you had to go someplace else. The first place he went after he got permission, which was immediately after that, he went to New York and gave his first sermon on missions and how important they are for the whole church, not just the mission. It was at St. Luke's in Brooklyn, and the offering that day was $37.91. This was the beginning of this wonderful building. Well, in 1882, he bought 3 lots here on the corner of 17th and Spring Street. And you can see when you walk by how much this little hill, how high it was that they had to cut down to make the street nearer level. But this was still the highest part in this little town of Little Rock, which had only 12,000 people in it. Well, in 1883, he and his son Wallace began studying architecture from books That was the way a lot of architects got started in those days. And they seem to have mastered it. It was said that Wallace never did buy a book, but he read all the time, and he just always on borrowed books. They mastered the business of architecture, and he started making plans for a cathedral here. And his plans were to make it in 3 separate parts on a pay-as-you-go basis. And it was going to be built by the 2 Pettifer brothers who had come here recently from England. And they were master carpenters and craftsmen. Well, the building was to be a frame building with a row of brick on the outside and some wire every 6th row of bricks. I'd always thought it was a little bit more reinforced than that, but it's still standing. By 1884, the west part of this building was finished, the entrance, the nave, and the baptistry. And the altar is where the main door is now. And so, of course, the congregation was turned around then and faced that way, and this was that first part. On October the 19th, a lot of things happened on his birthday, but the first service was held in that first section that was finished. And it was a free church. And that meant that it was not a pew rent church, as a lot of churches were in those days. The trouble with that was that if the family was not here to sit in that paid rent pew, no one else could sit there either. And that wasn't a very friendly way to treat people. And Bishop Pierce particularly wanted a church that he would have something to do with to be a free church. There were 62 people here at that first service. For instance, Christ Church didn't give up their pew rent until 1905. Well, by 1888, the second section, the crossing, was finished. Of course, and the altar was moved over here under the north window. It was a plain window then. It wasn't a pretty one like we see now. And many of the deans didn't stay long, so they were just probably one every year or two, because we were considered a hardship post, and I think we probably deserved it. We had the first vested choir here at Trinity, first in town, and Dean Proctor, the man that didn't stay here very long, for actually other reasons, but he went to New York and heard that St. Mark's in the Bowery was getting a new organ, and they would sell their old one for $3,000. And Dean Parker signed up for it right away. Otherwise, they'd just been using little parlor organs. But they had a wonderful service there, and apparently they turned away a whole lot of people that just simply couldn't get in the space that was available here. He mentioned in his diary that Bishop Pierce did, that he had borrowed $2,000 to pay for the organ. He was always borrowing money. I'm sure he paid it back, but he must have gotten really hoarse with preaching on missions, because he kept getting enough money to build that next part of the 3-part building. 13 years. He came here in 1870, and then by 1879, he got permission to go raise money. And in 1892, the building was finished. And it was not built by a committee or a fund drive. It was built by one man alone, Henry Niles Pierce. He was resourceful and patient and concentrated on one thing, and he proved what one individual, single person, is capable of doing. The early fall, the minister at St. Paul's in Fayetteville was not well, so Bishop Pierce went there to take his services for him, and then he got sick and died on September the 5th, 1899. He was there. Of course, they brought him back here for the funeral, and people said that it was the longest funeral procession in their memory at that point. He was buried at Oakland Cemetery, and that long procession had a good long walk from here to there because so few people had horses and buggies. Had to walk everywhere. Well, many distinctive memorials have since been added through the years. The window over the altar is in Bishop Pierce's memory. It was installed in 1909. Well, the bishop's altar has been moved. It's such a handsome altar, but it's been moved around from so many different places now. It's finally come to rest in the chapel, and I'm so glad it's still here with us. So today is the bishop's 194th birthday. Thanks be to God. Amen.